Howdy, YouTube parts. Jack Spade back here with you, High Noon Leather Works, for another leather adventure. And today, I'm going to be making a leather sling for a Rossi gallery. And it is a 22 pump. It's clear. And I'm going to be making a sling for it so I can carry it to the range. So that's today's project. I'm going to be doing a little bit of basket weaving, a little bit of stamping. So come on in and let's get started. All right, so the first thing that I did was I bought a set of sling swivels for this. So I added that on to the back here, and then it didn't really have doesn't have any screw holes or anything for a swivel in front. So what I did was I took a piece of black pre-dyed leather and cut it to length, put it around the magazine tube, made sure I did have to shave a little bit of that off because it was fairly thick and I didn't want this to bind up between here. So I got it the thickness I wanted. Then I just punched holes all the way across both pieces, wrapped it around there, and put my swivel on it. So it's no metal touching it, it's all leather, and it's nice and tight. So that's going to be the top of my sling. So I thought I'd show you that first. Then there's all different ways you could attach this. You could use rivets, you could use buckles, you could use Chicago screws, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to use Chicago screws and make one end of it adjustable, just for comfort, because this is for me. So I am going to make this, I'll give it a couple of different adjustments. So if I need to make it a little shorter or longer, I can. So then what I did was I cut a piece of, it's probably 11 ounce natural veg tan leather, and I cut it, I think, right at 1 inch. It's 7/8 of an inch wide, and then I'm not exactly sure how long it is. It's probably about 40 inches long, and I'm not going to need all that, but I had a piece that long anyway, so I just cut that out of there. Then I got me a piece of about the same thickness, maybe even a little thicker, maybe 10 to 12, and I made me a pattern of kind of what I wanted this to look like, my shoulder piece. And I didn't want to make it two-piece, so I had all this stitching to do, but I also didn't want my strap running underneath where it hit my shoulder. I wanted just this piece of leather to be on my shoulder. So what I did was I cut me a pattern, and this pattern is 12 inches long by 3 inches wide. Then I just took some French curves and messed around with the ends until I got it the way I wanted it to look. Did one end, folded it over, trace the other end so they matched. Then I took a slot punch and punched out these slots, and what that's going to be for is my leather strap. So my leather strap will go through those slots, come back, and then I'll attach them with Chicago screws after I loop it. So that way I don't have to run that all the way through. Then you can see these circles. I put this design around the outside, and basically that's just a 1/2 inch from the edge, and I'm going to do some basket weaving in here. Then these circles are for, I'm going to put my maker's mark in one, and I'm going to put this deer head in the other one. So it should be pretty neat when I'm done with it. I'm looking forward to seeing what it looks like. I am going to try something different with my maker's mark stamp today, and instead of using my little hand press that I use, I'm going to try using this hand clamp, and again, just to try something different. I want to see what that does, if I can get some decent impression off of that. So I've got my pattern, I've got my piece of leather. I'm ready to go ahead and trace that. Again, I cut my strap ahead of time. So all I'll have to do now is cut the length of it to fit. And again, this is for me personally, so I know by fitting it as I go how long I'm going to want that strap. I'm going to go ahead and mark these slots so I know exactly where to cut those out or punch them out. Now in the circles, I don't want to use my pen because I don't want to mark there an ink mark. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just take my stylus and just very carefully and easily go around those circles. And what I'm doing is I'm just putting a slight indentation in the leather in that circle shape. I don't know if you could see that. Yeah, you can see it, I believe. Just a slight indentation in there so that I know where to stop when I start doing my basket weaving stamp. Now I'll have to do the same thing on the 1/2 inch margin around here too. So I'll have to mark it off of my pattern and then go ahead and use my scribe so that I know where to stay in, because I'm not doing any stitching. So let's go ahead and cut this out first. That's some nice thick sturdy leather, and I believe I ordered that off of Amazon. I get a lot of my leather from Kentucky Leather and Hides or I get some of it from Tandy. Just depends on where I'm at, what's going on. And again, I've said this many times before, the key is have you a good sharp knife, good sharp blade. And if you haven't, I'll put the description or the link in the description for Kentucky Leather and Hides. Go check out their website. They have some exotic stuff and very interesting. So get down here to the end, cutting that out. Put those little pieces in there. Now I can go ahead and I might as well go ahead and stamp these or punch these, get them cleaned out. As you can see, I'm rocking that pretty hard, knocking everything off the table. And I can flip that around. You can see I've got my slots in there, and I can double check it, see if I need to make it just a little bit wider. I want this to fit snug. And if I round this just a little bit, which I will do, I think I'll just leave it the way it is. And if I need to just barely take a little off later, I will. And that punch does a really nice job. So I've got all my slots in there. And then next, what I need to do is take my pattern here for my 1/2 inch that I had all the way around and do my scribe mark for my boundary for my basket weave. I don't want to go all the way out to the edge. I want to leave that smooth. So let's go ahead, and I think I came down, according to my pattern, 2 inches from the top. So I'm just going to put a mark at 2 inches. On both ends. And again, I don't want to use a pen or a pencil, anything like that, because I don't want that showing up. Then what I'll do is, just like I did my pattern, I'll come down like it's almost like connecting the dots. I'll just make short little marks at a 1/2 inch from the edge. And I want to try to make them in the same area across from each other, just to keep my shape the same. And then I'll just connect those. Using my scribe or my stylus. Just like I did on the circles, I'm putting a light mark, and I'll show you that in just a second as soon as I get back around to the top here. And the reason why you want to make sure you put those dots or marks as you're going around and you're measuring across from each other is so that you keep your image symmetrical where these lines change direction, because even the slightest difference will make it look odd or odd shaped. Alright, so I'll finish this off across here, and I can go ahead and show you the lines. You can see I've got my border now, so I know where I'm going to stay within as I do my stamping. Now I'll quickly do a little beveling on the edge, and since this is just going to be one thickness of leather, I'm going to go ahead and bevel both sides. I'll use my strop that I made with my jeweler's rouge on it, polish that up. That'll make that glide right over that. It's a personal thing, but I love it if I can make it all the way around with just one piece. And I didn't almost whacked about an inch there. Get that out of the way, flip it over, and I can do the same thing on this side. I'll strap it again just to polish it up, let it glide nice and smooth. And this will also, on this unfinished side, it'll get that edge, that fuzzy edge off from cutting it with the knife. And then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and I'll burnish that edge when I case it to do my stamping. We're going to be having the sponge out anyway for casing that leather. Might as well go ahead, I'll wet that edge and I'll go ahead and put a burnish on that. I'm not concerned about it being beautiful or perfect or anything, but let me reach in front of you and grab my sponge. I'll go ahead and case this. I don't want to soak it down, but I do want to get it nice and moist. And then I'll go ahead and do the edge. There's other things you can use for the edge to do your burnishing. I've always just preferred to use water. Seems to work really good for me. Again, a lot of these things are personal preference, whatever you like to do. So I'm gonna let that kind of come back to natural there, and we'll figure out how we're going to do our basket weave stamping. And I'll burnish the edge here before we do that. So when I do my burnishing, I'm not pushing super hard on this burnisher, and you can see the edge, how slick and shiny it's getting already. So I let it sit. After I moisten it up, I let it sit just a little bit. And I don't want it super wet, I just want it moist when I initially put my water on there. And I'm really getting that, the friction, it's not how hard you press necessarily, but the friction is what's going to make that slick and shiny and smooth. I can go around this end, come back around, and meet up where I started. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this around, and I'm going to continue with the raw side facing me, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to go around it quickly, and again, I'm not pressing hard. And that's it. That's all I'm going to do. Now it's nice and shiny and slick. So I've got a nice finished edge all the way around that. My leather has come back to its natural color. I can go ahead and grab my piece of granite. And then decide how I want to do this. I don't like to do, like, I've got a line, reference line here, all the way down. I showed you how I put that in there. I don't like to just do my basket weaves straight with that line. I like to do an angle or something to get started. So what I'll do is, and it can just be random, is I'll just take my ruler and make a very slight mark with my scribe or my stylus, and that's going to be my beginning of where I'm going to do my basket weave. So I'll go end to end, and then I'll split that, and I'll put that, you see I've got my first row done. Now I'll come over and I'll split that and put my next one almost like above it or below it, but I'm going to like attach those. So I'll do this and I'll show you. Then you can go end for end just like you did once you get that first one on there. And then on this end, I've got half of that showing, so I'm gonna very slightly tap that on this end at an angle. So I'm gonna turn this at an angle so that I'm only putting pressure when I tap on it on one half of this. And that's what's gonna give me that half of a basket weave mark right there. And then I'll just move up and do the same thing again. And you change that every time you move up or down a row. So you just keep alternating where you start from. And then I think I'll turn this around so I can see where I'm actually hitting it at. Makes it easier. And you got to be so careful when you hit that at an angle, because it's so easy to put little marks on there. So you got to be very, very careful. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead. This is how much I've got done so far, and you can see it doesn't take very long. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and finish this. I'll speed it up for you, and then as soon as I get this, we'll come back. Alright, so there's my basket weave stamps all done. And I like doing the basket weave uh, in a design because it's so 3D looking. Uh, I just like the way the basket weave looks. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up these circles a little bit with just a small punch. And I think I'm going to use this bevel punch. And I'll just go around the outside of this circle and just barely tap as I go around and clean up those circles with the basket weave on them or around them. And that's the circles that I'm going to put my other stampings in. And this does take a little bit more time to clean those up, but it even gives it more depth by going around that. It makes that stand out a little bit more. And I'm not hitting it super hard, not trying to drive it real deep, but it does give it a little more depth of that circle. It makes it pop out a little bit more. We'll see what that does to the effect of the stamp. And you can tell I'm hitting it very lightly. And I'm spinning my piece so that I'm keeping my stamp in the same spot all the time. Alright, so I've got both of those, went around both of them, cleaned those up. Now let's go ahead and let's do the buck on, let's do it on the top circle. And I'm definitely going to have to hit this one a lot harder to get it to sink in there. That turned out really good. Now let's see if we can get the high noon maker's mark to turn out as good. And what I'm going to do with it is I'm going to put a piece of 1/4-inch steel plate that I've had some cookies cut out of as a backer. Get that squeezed down a little bit. And the key on this one's going to be to get it square. Because I want good even pressure on this. Then I can go ahead and put my pressure down on it. I can look under there, you can see the plastic oval shape of the actual stamp. And I'm just squeezing, keeping that nice and tight. Then I'll release it. My cookie fell out, and it's just not deep enough. So that method, I wanted to try it. It's just not going to work. I don't think you get even enough pressure on it. So I'm going to take it over, put it in my hand press, and I'm going to press that in there. So I'll be right back. Alright, so we've got the buck stamp in, and I repressed the high noon maker's mark in that one, and it turned out really good that way. So that hand clamp thing, I wanted to try it, see what it did. Not too impressed, so I just went with my bench clamp, and I'll probably stick with that from now on, because that seems to do a pretty good job. It's pretty even, gives me nice depth in there. So there's my shoulder piece, and I've got my straps. I'm gonna go ahead, we've got our stamping done, so we can move this piece of granite now out of my way. So let's go ahead and take this piece, and let's go ahead and put a rounded end on it. And I'm going to do that on both ends and then cut it from each end. It's not going to use any more material. So I'll just turn that around. Do it on that end too. Pick it up off the floor and knocked it down. And then that was just a hair small. I'll just take my knife and trim any of that off of there. Let me double check the other end. It looks pretty good. So let's go ahead and take this one end, which would be the top, and get that to push down. That's going to be a nice snug fit, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for a nice snug fit. There we go. Now it's sliding down on there really easy once I get it through that. So that's going to have to go through here, through this other loop or slot. Then it's going to have to go around the swivel and then attach to itself. So I don't want to not have enough through there, but I'm gonna have to cut this off, take it all apart and everything when I dye it. So it's not super critical. This leather is just really thick and really stiff on the strap. Now going through the other way, the way I made the hole with the punch, it's going right through there, no problem. Alright, so there's the top. That's the way it looks. So it's going to look really nice, real sharp. I have to put this through the swivel at the top and have to look at it and see how much I need. Probably not very much, because if this goes through the swivel and comes around and attaches with a Chicago screw, this piece is what's going to be on my shoulder. So let me grab it real quick. And here's the end that's going to be with this shoulder piece. So when you throw this on your shoulder, this end right here is the piece that's going to come down and hang like so. So I've got quite a bit through here now, and it looks like, let me set this down real quick, it looks like I've got approximately 4 inches, which I think is going to be alright. So let's go ahead and cut this other end off. And what I'm going to do is mark it with that punch, and then I can just use my rounded end punch here. And that'll be that end, and those will match when I put those in that swivel. Now let's go ahead and I'm going to use a Chicago screw. Let's look and see on these Chicago screws that I have how big they are. And you've got a stud, and you got a screw, a slotted head screw, and you got a threaded stud. So there's the slotted screw, there's the stud that's got the threads in it. So we're looking at this stud as how big around a hole do we want for that. Don't want it super loose, or so I'm going to make it fairly tight, and we'll go from there and see what happens. Now what I want to do is I want to put these holes through so that they're even on the end here, so that those ends match up. This is not the end that I'm going to be too worried about making it adjustable. Now I could if I wanted to, and I can always go back and do that if I wanted to. So I'm going to put a hole through that. And again, this leather is super strong and thick. So there's one hole. Let's go ahead. Now that we've got that hole in that top one, we can go ahead and match them up, and I can make a mark through that hole so I get a good match. And then I can do the second layer. Take the Chicago screw, put the stud through the back. Let's see if that hole's big enough. And it just pops right in there. And let's see if the screw threaded part goes in there okay. And it should be thick enough to where it's gonna pull it down and put some pressure on that leather to keep that nice and taut, keep it together. And I'll put a little glue or Loctite or whatever on there. So there it is, screwed together. That's going to hold that end around that top swivel. Now we'll do the bottom part, and the bottom part is the one I'm going to make to be adjustable. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead, and I'm going to go ahead and use this end. I know I already cut the other end, but I'm going to use this end. And let's see how long, if we fit that. And I'll have to put, let me get you set up over here so you can see what I'm doing. So I'll take that screw out, and a lot of this again is dry fitting because I'm going to take all this apart, dye it, then put it all back together. Alright, got the battery replaced. So we're ready to go from here to mark over to here through those 3 holes that I just punched. I'm just going to mark it with a pin here. Then I can go ahead and drive those holes. And what that'll do is that'll allow those holes to match up. For those Chicago screws. Or I can go ahead and use them as adjustable holes also. I can go ahead and pop those out now. Again, that is the hardest, thickest leather I've ever used. Because my punch is nice and sharp. It's not the punch, it's just this leather is so hard and thick. Look how thick that is. The strap will last a lifetime for sure. So I'm hitting it so hard and so many times I'm moving everything on my workbench. So, all right, there's those holes. And if you fold that over, those holes will match. You can see the light going through them. And then I need to do a set of holes here for this side. And I'm going to go ahead and do this hole first. And you could feel that going through that leather. I'm going to fold this over just like we did the other side. Make a mark. And punch a hole through this side for another Chicago screw. So you'll be able to take this completely off if you wanted to do another strap for someone else for a different size, something like that. It's not a problem with these Chicago screws. It's not like rivets where you'd have to break them off or grind them off. You can just unscrew this, take it apart, and use it for someone else. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is take all these pieces apart. Let me get this stuff out of my way real quick. And I have to be able to take this apart because I have to be able to do my dyeing. Alright, so I've got my dyeing set up here. Got some old cardboard that I've used forever, for years. And I'm going to use this Fibings leather dye, and it's mahogany. That Rossi is a black synthetic stock, and everything on it's black. So I kind of didn't want to go with I just wanted something a little contrasty. So I'm going to do this and the strap in a mahogany. And let's see how it looks. It's going to be dark, but I thought it might make the basket weave real sharp. And it looks like it's going to make it look really neat. So get that nice and coated. Let that soak in. And this is the way I normally do it. I mean, everybody has preferences of how they like to do their dyeing. I really like to use a wool dauber. So that's good and coated on that side. Let that set for just a second. let that basket weave soak in. And I'm just taking out any of the stuff that's just lying in the low-lying areas there. And this will lighten up, but it really made the basket weave look great, I think. And like I said, the mahogany is dark, but it's not black. So, and it will lighten up some, but it should give a little bit of contrast. So, plus I get, you know, kind of tired of using the same colored dyes a lot. So when I do get to do something for myself, um, I like to change it up a bit. I've done the edges. Now we can flip it over and do the back side. That other leather that I used for the strap, I kept talking about how thick and hard it is. And then this leather is the same thickness, but so much softer. So that's what'll be on my shoulder. So it's nice that that's going to be nice and soft. So that is coated. Just hanging on one of the pegboard hooks. All right, now we can go ahead and move to the straps. And you can tell the difference in this leather right away just by the way it takes the dye. I'm assuming it's the process that they used when they tanned it, or don't know. I don't know all those details of how that process works, but all right, gonna pour a little more mahogany dye in there. Do the back of the strap. Wipe off any of the excess that went through the holes. Set that aside and grab the longer one. And do the edges. And don't spill my dye. this hard leather that I used on my straps, it takes dye really well. Just the raw side is almost like it's machined to get it smooth or something. I'm not really sure how that works or what process they're using to do that. It definitely takes the dye differently than, and it leaves more of a mahogany look to it than the other side. So we can go ahead and let those dry. So I've got my shoulder strap and then my two swivel straps dyed, drying, and I'll be back when that's all dry and we'll put it together and have a finished product. Alright, so it's been several hours since I put that mahogany dye on there. It turned out pretty nice. I like the basket weave. I just think it puts a nice touch on there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come back and I'm going to hit this with some sheen. You can see it's just kind of dull. So let's see if we can come in here with some Fibings leather sheen and see if we can boost the look of that up a little bit. And it may be kind of neat to see if there's contrast between the lower parts that have been stamped and the raised parts. So I'm going to make sure I coat that real good. We'll let these towels, these throwaway shop towels, the white ones, they don't have any lint, but man, can they absorb the whatever it is you're putting on, in this case the sheen. So let's let that hit the edge real quick too. Let that sit for just a second. And while that piece is drying, we'll set it aside. We can go ahead and hit the straps. And remember, it was a little harder leather, so it's definitely not going to soak in or take like that softer piece. So I'll get it coated real good. I'm just going to do the outside. I think it's already looking better. I haven't done anything but just put a little bit of sheen on it. Let it sit. Make sure I get it coated really well. And then it says on the instructions, once you let it dry, you can buff it if you want. I normally do because I kind of like that. It makes it pop. So let's take a microfiber cloth and let's pull this piece back in, and you can see it's still kind of dull. And let's see what this microfiber cloth does to it if we buff that sheen. And again, I'm not pressing real hard. I'm going quickly with more friction than anything, but I'm not pressing hard. You can see I'm not taking anything off. And just buff that quickly. And now look at the shine compared to what it was. You can see it. Looks real good in the camera. But it also, those lowered spots where I didn't pour it on there or dab it on with a sponge or anything. So the lower spots, like from the stamped deer, it gives it a little contrast. It looks really nice. So do the letters in my maker's mark, the High Noon maker's mark. So that turned out pretty good. Let's do a strap. Again, just buffing with that soft microfiber cloth. Gives it just a little shine. All right. So that's ready to go. So I've got one Chicago screw that I had out earlier. That'll be for the top strap for the swivel. Then I'm going to need a couple for down here for the swivel on the butt stock. And then I'm going to need one for up here on this strap. So I'm going to need, I've got one set out. So these are very convenient to use. You can use blue Loctite, or I can put this leather craft glue on it, and it seems to hold it just fine. But yet I can take it out if I want to take it out. It just keeps it from loosening up on its own. So I'm ready to grab the gallery, and let's go ahead and put the small piece, the small strap, back in the shoulder piece, the pad. With those slickened up, they'll go in there much nicer. Alright, so I've got those two matched up the way I want them. Put the strap through first. Now I can put my Chicago screw stud in there. Now I can take a little bit of this leather craft glue, and I could just put it either on the stud or on the threads, either or. And I'm just putting a teeny bit on there. just to keep that from backing out. I don't think it will, but and then snug that Chicago screw down. And that's why I don't think it'll be backing out anyway. It's just because of the way it's made. So now we can go ahead and put in this strap. And we're going to put it in basically the same as this side. Make sure I get the right side there. And then once we get it through, we can go ahead and fold it over and put it through the second slot. You can hear how tight that is. It's nice and snug. And I could take a stylus or something through that hole that I've got for the Chicago screw to help pull that through. Then once I get my two holes lined up, like so, I can leave that stylus in there and just work that down on that strap. Like so. Then I can go ahead and put my Chicago screw stud in the back. And this one hasn't had one in it yet, so I may need to round that a hair with my stylus. And there it goes, popped right in. Now I can take the screw and again just barely put a touch of that leather craft on the tip of that. Set that over there while I get that one ready. Drop it in. And tighten it down. Now, there's the two straps that go to the shoulder strap or the pad. Now, I need to come down here and at the butt end of the gallery and do my Chicago screws down here. Now, my plan is to put two of them in here. Remember, I put 3 sets of holes, so I could make it adjustable if I needed to for some reason. But I can go ahead and punch that stud through there. Alright. So I'm going to put it in the first and third hole. Leave that second hole empty for now. And then let's do the last one. Those are small screws. All right. So if we needed to remove that for some reason, take it off, we could either take it off from the swivels here on the gallery, or we can undo these screws and take it off. Doesn't really matter either way, it's not that big a deal. All right, those are all screwed down. Nice shiny hardware. This is ready. Let's take a look at it and see what it looks like. I think I've got this end down here. I've got the Chicago screw up here, and I don't like the looks of that, so I'm going to switch it and put the loop through the swivel and put my Chicago screw behind here. So yeah, this could have been much shorter. I could have shortened this up if I was going to do it this way. It just looked so much nicer and cleaner that way. Now look at that. So much nicer like that. There's what the top looks like now. Nice and secure. You could pull that through there and pull this down if you'd like. Would just be a matter of changing where you put your strap, so you could pull this straight down. Let me see if I can do that real quick. Alright, so I turned that around and it looks so much better with this end. Now you've got plenty of this loop that comes around. It fits nice on the shoulder. Got plenty of space to move it around if you need to, and it's perfect right here because this is about 7/8 of an inch strap to 1 inch, and I can just hang right onto it. This won't slide off my shoulder. It's nice. That strap keeps that away from the magazine tube. So real happy with it. It turned out nice. Again, I'll probably put some conditioner or something on it, soften that thing up a little bit, these straps especially, but it turned out really good. Another project in the books. Appreciate you coming along. Appreciate you watching, and come back next week, check out the next video, and as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.